Hi, welcome once again to Senior Focus. I'm your host, Bill Adams. Senior Focus is a show designed for folks over the age of about 50. But of course, if you're younger than that, this show could be very informative for you because we're going to be talking about something that's affected quite a few people in this area. Before we get into that, though, I wanted to thank Greg Roden from Armstrong's Channel 20 and 100. Also Keith Kaiser, who is from Mill Creek Metro Parks. Keith allows us to use the Davis Visitor Center, which is where we come to you from every month. And we want to encourage you to use the Mill Creek Metro Parks. Today, we're going to be talking with an old friend. And we were just talking before the show about, well, this is Dorothy Barto. Dorothy is with the Alzheimer's Network, and welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And we were talking again, you've been obviously here before. But we want to make sure that everybody in the community in Mahoning County knows about the Alzheimer's Network. And I guess at the top, why don't we just, if you can, just give a little thumbnail sketch about the network itself and who you folks are.
Okay, we are a service group. We're a volunteer organization. We're there to help families through what is a very difficult disease. Our base is local. We are not a national organization. But there are people in this valley that really need some TLC. They need some understanding of what the disease is, some compassion about it. There's so many different things that come up in support group, and that's one of our services. We have an information line. If somebody just wants to call and ask questions, fine. You know, we'll try to direct them in the right direction. We have educational seminars and that sort of thing too. We'll talk about those a little bit later in more detail.
Sure. So again, this is a local group and you're all volunteer, correct?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we are.
But that doesn't mean that it runs for free, so you're going to need some assistance in producing materials and things like that.
Right. Just the printing alone of all the brochures and the postage to send things out, and actually the telephone bill too. Yeah. It all adds up.
Well, and why don't we give your phone number at the top too, if people have a question, and we'll give this out during the show too.
Okay, we are at 330-788-9755.
Okay, and you got into this because you have personal experience, right?
Yes, and that's quite a teacher when you have a family member that has Alzheimer's. In my case, it was my mom. My dad was the primary caregiver, but you learn a lot by going through it.
Right, and that's what we're here for. Again, if you're a caregiver yourself, or maybe you may be possibly afflicted with Alzheimer's or the beginning stages, and you need some place to turn, you know, this is a very good resource. Why don't we talk about maybe some of the things, if you get a call or someone at the phone gets a call, and what are some of the questions you might ask if somebody, say, calls in and says, I'm worried about, you know, my parent or my spouse. What are some of the things you try to draw out from people? Well,
first of all, we ask them to identify what it is that is a concern to them. Mm-hmm. And having lived the disease like our volunteers have, we kind of can target, all right, they're repeating themselves. They can't balance the checkbook. They've gotten lost in the car, or they've had an accident. They've become kind of withdrawn. Mm-hmm. And they don't take the initiative to talk to people. They aren't hostile, they just pull back from other people. Mm-hmm. Some of those things are signs, and we have a brochure called Letting the Doctor Know.
Okay.
Because it's a very important thing to bring the doctor in and let them understand. We have certain questions that we ask the family, you know, fill this out, just quietly give it to the nurse to pass it on to the doctor. And the reason for that is a patient who is beginning Alzheimer's can put up a very good front. Mm-hmm. Their social skills are good. Even the doctor can't really recognize, because he might say, well, are you eating well? You know, how's your diet doing? And they say, oh yes, I eat fine. And here, you know, and here's the daughter in the background going, no, all she eats is cookies. Mm-hmm. So there are some little things that if that daughter doesn't speak up, and because of respect for the elder, often they don't.
Right.
Or the doctor doesn't hear some of the information that he needs to know. How long has this been going on? Have they had a major surgery? Have they had a loss, an emotional loss? Perhaps the death of a close loved one. All of these things can impact a person's mind and how they act. And there are diseases that a doctor can identify and can treat and can reverse.
Right, that just some of the symptoms of Alzheimer's aren't necessarily the disease. I mean, it could be caused by other things, correct?
That's right.
Yeah.
There are types of anemia, there's thyroid problems. Even someone with a urinary tract infection gets a little fuzzy because they're not well. They're
Right.
physically not well.
Mm-hmm. So you would recommend people go to the doctor as soon
Absolutely.
as they can?
Mm-hmm. And let the doctor know what is going on, not just what happens in the office, but what the family has observed.
Now, as part of your process with the Alzheimer's Network, I believe you've had some doctors and professionals actually, do presentations.
Yes, we have.
And are you still working with Dr. Wilkins?
We are still working with Dr. Wilkins, and we also work with university hospitals in Cleveland and UPMC in Pittsburgh.
Okay. So again, when a caregiver gets maybe a diagnosis, I mean, they're there with their loved one and they hear this, that a person has Alzheimer's. What are some of the things that caregivers need to be prepared for? Or what, if I'm somebody taking care of a loved one at home, what do I do? I guess that would be my question.
Every individual is different. Meaning, and every family and the mechanics of the family can be different. If the person's personality who has the disease or the diagnosis, if it's always been a strong personality, that can be a very challenging person. Because they're used to doing what they want to do, when they want to do it, the way they want to do it, and they don't want somebody else interfering. So that can be a real challenge, and that can drive somebody to a support group like right now. Like, I can't cope with this. What do I do when? There are people who are, thank goodness my mom was a very cooperative person.
Right.
When she didn't understand something or she was afraid, you could notice that she'd get anxious. And we tell people, start to read the body language. When they are starting to get a little anxious, that could lead to agitation, which then you've got a bigger problem. So trying to divert some of these behaviors before they get out of hand, or change the subject, or like maybe the middle stage of the disease, one might say, well, I want to go see mom. Well, maybe mom has been gone for 20 or 30 years. And do you say just, well, your mother is dead? That's pretty blunt.
Right.
But you can say, oh, we have that appointment over at the eye doctor. I think we better go do that, and try to change the subject and divert them from that. But it's a whole different way of living, and it's someone who's been married to an individual maybe for 50 years or more. All of a sudden, they've got a new person that they're living with.
Right.
And it's really a challenge to adjust your thinking to, that's not the same person that used to take the garbage out every Tuesday. The garbage is still sitting in the garage and nobody has taken it out. And one lady said, he lies about it. He wasn't lying, his brain wasn't processing the information anymore, that was the day that it went out to the curb.
Yeah, I would think the word patience comes to mind. I mean, that you have to be an incredibly patient person. And what you were talking about before about, I guess maybe sort of accepting somebody where they are, that's got to be very difficult because I have seen people try to not argue with somebody with Alzheimer's, but try to convince them, no, you actually, like you mentioned about your mom passed away, no, she's not here anymore, that kind of thing. And that's not the reality for the person with Alzheimer's. So you have to sort of accept them where they are.
And One thing we do talk about in support group too is you can't teach an Alzheimer patient something. Say there's a new washing machine, and say the husband has gone through, now you set this and you set that and you set this. Well, she may still be processing about this first knob,
Right.
let alone the other ones, and it's too much for her. So then she stops doing the washing, or does something wrong,
Right.
and then the husband gets upset because, well, look what you did, and she couldn't learn that, and that's what is extremely stressful, especially for an older person taking care of an older person, is all of a sudden they have to absorb all of the duties of the household. The husband's learning the washing machine and doing that, and maybe he's doing the cooking, and eventually he's going to have to do more of the cooking because it won't be safe for her to do it.
Correct, yeah.
And there's safety issues involved. It's a whole horizon of things that people have to adjust to.
Well, we've been talking about support groups, and maybe this would be a good time to mention, I know you're in multiple counties, actually.
Yes, we cover Trumbull, Mahoning, Columbiana, and Mercer.
Okay. But specifically for Mahoning here, for the folks that are watching, where are some of the towns, or where are some of the locations?
Well, you could start with A on the list there. We're in Austintown. We have 2 in Boardman, a daytime and an evening one. And we do that on purpose because the children of the patient can make it in the evening. Or maybe they can watch Dad while Mom goes to support group. We try to change it up from time to time. The Canfield one is in the daytime. There's one in Camel. We also have a new one in Lake Milton and Howland, trying to think, Poland, and Salem also.
Okay. So anywhere really in the immediate area within probably 5 or 10 minute drive.
Right, and they're scattered all over the calendar, so to speak. So one might be the 2nd week, another one might be the 4th week. And if somebody wants to go to the one in Camel and the one in Girard, that's fine. Because you learn different things from other caregivers. And you interact differently with different folks. And some situations are similar, some are totally different.
Well, I would think it would work both ways. Again, a person may, as you said, may learn some things, but also something that they came across, maybe they could share with others.
Absolutely.
That worked for them. I think of, again, people, just on the grand scheme of things, if you look at the big picture, I guess most people with Alzheimer's are still at home.
Absolutely. Most of them are at home, cared for by usually one primary caregiver.
And we think of, again, people may be living in a community assisted living or nursing home, but again, most people are still at home. And, just to think about all that entails, you've got to have a caregiver there. Now, can some folks go without a caregiver at the beginning stages of Alzheimer's?
Beginning stages, yes, but there again, you have to consider the personality and how much initiative that person might take. Would they take the car someplace and get lost? Or has the doctor actually said to them, you really shouldn't be driving anymore?
Okay.
And maybe even written it on a prescription blank, John is not permitted to drive. But is that going to hold true, that John is not going to drive? Or is he going to think, I'm just fine? Because they live in their previous existence, so to speak. They think they can do all the things that they used to. The roads have changed. There are new streets. There are detours. There's heavier traffic. So many of those things could impact his situation of driving. And maybe it's not a good idea, but he doesn't know that.
Right. Well, and it's got to be very difficult to give up your independence.
Oh, it is.
I mean, in America, we're almost totally dependent on the car. Unfortunately, we don't have, maybe in Europe you could go by bus or by train, but not really around here. Well, this sort of brings up, I think one of the key issues is, just legal decision making. And, at a certain point, and it's a gray area, you've got to figure sometimes somebody has to step in because the person's judgment is compromised. And I know you have something coming up.
Yes, we do. We have a legal and financial seminar that's coming up. It will be in April, on April the 29th. It will be at the Girard Library. The presenter will be Attorney Elliot Legault. He's an elder law attorney. He specialized in elder law for years, got a lot of experience. And we will be talking about everything from the fact that a family really needs to get their durable power of attorney in place, a health care power of attorney, a living will. Those things need to be signed when the person is competent to sign them, because otherwise the document is not really a viable tool. And there are other things that people have to think about. What if mom gets sick, dad has Alzheimer's, what are we going to do? It's a good idea to have a long-range plan, or some alternative. I've told people many times, even though you think you may never use an adult daycare, you may never use an assisted living or a special unit or a nursing home, don't ever say never, because things can change, and if you have no plan, you have to just take what's available, and sometimes that's not the best choice.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, and again, we've talked about this a lot of times on Senior Focus about trying to plan ahead. The unfortunate reality is, just a wild guess, I'd say 80 or 90% of people just sort of have a crisis, and then all of a sudden they're thrown in the deep end and they're trying to, find a way out. But again, through the seminars you have, and these seminars repeated throughout the year.
Yes, they are, and they are free. There is no charge for them. We do ask that people call for a reservation because the room can accommodate only so many people. And we have literally packed that room a couple of times lately, and I don't want to
yeah, people standing outside, yeah.
And we want people to be able to ask questions. It starts at 6:30 because the library closes at 8, so it gives us some time for questions and answers. But the attorney does explain the Medicaid law, which is very complicated, and if people don't understand that, they can do the wrong thing or do the wrong thing at the wrong time or the right thing, and they need to understand and learn about not only the disease, because it can go fast sometimes and then slow down. You have to think, all right, I've got to be a couple years even ahead of this, not months,
right,
to know, all right, I have my affairs in place, or my son can take over if something happens to me.
And if people were interested in the seminar or some of the other things we have that we're going to talk about, what's the number again?
It's 330-788-9755.
Okay. One other thing that struck me is that, as you said, you have to have someone sign these things while they're still competent, they're still able to. And again, a lot of people don't, and so really the alternative, the only one there at that point, is maybe a guardianship, which is a lot more complicated.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
And you have to go through the probate court. So it's probably, again, best to, as you're saying, plan ahead.
And there can be family conflicts that you might not even anticipate. It's not always a balky patient that doesn't want to do what needs to be done. And the guardianship sometimes has to be brought into the picture in a case like that. But if some of these decisions aren't made ahead of time and you don't get the family together to have a little family conference and get everybody on the same page, it can cause pain that lasts for years within the family.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that about the family and trying to get people on the same page. That's probably one of the key things in this whole situation is, you've got multiple children. Maybe one becomes the primary caregiver. I mean, do you see that a lot?
A lot.
Yeah. And so you've got to have the lines of communication open, because I think, resentments can build up and all kind of problems if you're not communicating.
We had a family, there were 13 children, and all of the caregiving fell on one daughter. And she did it with no question about doing it, but the other children became very hostile about that situation. They didn't like it. So, you know, you want to prevent that sort of thing from happening. You want to keep the family as cohesive as you can.
Right, and the best case scenario would be you have a team approach. You know, maybe people take shifts or they do different duties.
And I did have one family that there were 9 children, and the oldest daughter made up a schedule of each one took 2 weeks, and it didn't have to be like the son. It could be the daughter-in-law. It could be one of their older children. But somebody stayed with grandma, and they went through that, and it worked just fine to have that schedule.
What are some of the actual support services that maybe caregivers can look to? I mean, are there programs through the state?
There are programs through the Area Agency on Aging. They are often based on income and assets, and it's, again, that's kind of complicated to get into here. But the point is, a lot of folks will look to an adult daycare. That's a great tool. Unfortunately, there have been a couple of them that have closed because they are not going to be great money makers. It's not going to be something that is going to bring a lot of revenue in. But it is a wonderful tool to not only give the person a safe surrounding where they can have staff that will see to their needs and have activities and that sort of thing, some stimulation, but it also gives that caregiver a chance to breathe.
Right.
It may be going home and going to sleep. They may need that more than anything else. It may be going to a grandchild's play that they would really like to go, but they can't take Dad along because they don't know what he might do.
Sure, sure.
So.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. Actually, Easter Seals will be here in a few weeks, and I know they have an adult day.
They do have an adult day center. They've it was one of the premier ones in the area. They started in fact, I was involved when they first started that one because it's a wonderful, wonderful resource for folks. And there are, in each of the counties that we serve, there is at least one day program.
Right. Well, I think the Antonine Sisters also here in Mahoning County.
Yes.
The western. Yeah.
And they can serve actually Trumbull County because they're really close to the line. It's not that far from Warren to North Jackson where they are.
Right. Well, before I forget, and we want to make sure we get to discuss some of the other events you have coming up. I know you have a couple things coming. This would be in May. In May,
we are going to be doing double duty. They both happen the same week. We have a charity golf outing that a team of gentlemen are putting this together for us. It will be at Pine Lakes in Hubbard, and this will be on Sunday the 24th. It's a shotgun start. We actually have registration information that we can send out to folks. There's a little brochure about it. The other event that happens like that following weekend on May 30th, we'll be out at the Canfield Fairgrounds for our walk, which is pretty much a social event. We have a mile course around the fairgrounds, and if somebody really wants to do 5 miles, they could do 5 miles. But we also have a cheater course of a half mile because some people go like, I will start, but I'm not going to go ahead and do that whole thing. And then we have like a basket raffle and some other types of entertaining things. And we also have a little canteen so people can get their lunch before they leave. It goes from about 8:30 till 11 or sometimes noon.
Okay, and that's at the Canfield Fairgrounds?
Right.
And while I'm thinking about it, if you don't mind, I'm going to reach over and get one of these. This will be maybe my only charity golf outing of the year because I'm not that good, but
we'll be glad to have you anyway.
Well, the good thing about these is you're in a team, so
yes.
You know, you could rely on the other players to, you know, if you don't hit a good shot. Well, again, we're talking with Dorothy Barto. She's with the Alzheimer's Network, and you actually have a physical location too?
Yes, we are on Market Street in Boardman,
okay.
The northern part of Boardman, and we do a lot of work there. We put our newsletter together. The newsletter that we mail out looks like this. This is the most recent one, so it has the golf outing on it, but there are very fine articles in here that if somebody can't get to support group, and the weather has been horrific and we've had to cancel a few, which we tend not to do, but there are some articles in here that will help people better understand what the disease is. This article happens to explain the value of day programs. Besides them helping the patient, helping the caregiver, it provides some separation, because so many times a caregiver will actually even follow, or be followed by their patient, because that patient is so reliant on that caregiver that they want to know where they are all the time.
Right.
So that separation, if in the coming months or years that individual needs to go to an assisted living, it's not so abrupt.
Correct.
They've had some separation. And actually, we've had a number of folks, mostly gentlemen, that have veteran services that will pay for the adult day program.
Oh, okay.
And that's a fine resource for people.
Yeah, and in Mahoning County, you might want to contact the Veteran Service Commission, which is over on Oak Hill, the Renaissance Center, and that's good to know.
We try to do a lot of cooperative work with these different groups. The area agency has their family caregiver support program. They have some other services from Passport that they can implement, but there's only so much in the way of funding that anybody can do, and a lot of the expense of this does fall on the family.
Right, and we've been talking most of the time here about, well, all of it, I guess, about caring for someone at home. And before we leave that, I saw that famous quote, and I know you've used this before, about a doctor who once spoke with the family, said, when I diagnose Alzheimer's, I have two patients.
That's right.
Because that's the patient themselves and the caregiver, because of all the stress and strain.
Exactly, and the caregiver may have some physical issues of their own. They might have some blood pressure challenges, and this is a very difficult disease to deal with, and it is 24/7.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we only have a couple minutes to go, so this will be, I guess, the last question. But do you also assist with people if they have to turn to a facility? Do you help them with that process?
We have a number of facilities that we will give them some primary choices, tell them, well, you can look at Medicare.gov website and check what their inspections have shown. There are other tools. Listen to what the people at support groups say. Maybe someone has placed their person in a certain facility and they really like it. Maybe another one has not had a good experience. And sift through all of these things. Talk to everybody that you know of that might have a person in a facility. I had one gentleman that just went to a facility and started to talk to some of the visitors. That gave him information.
Good idea. Well, again, we've been talking with Dorothy Barto. Dorothy is with the Alzheimer's Network, and you could reach her or the staff or volunteer staff at 330-788-9755. And thanks again, Dorothy, for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And again, you've been watching Senior Focus. I'm your host, Bill Adams. Senior Focus comes to you a couple times each month through Armstrong's Channel 20 and 100. And thank you to Greg Roden. Also, thanks to Keith Kaiser, who is the head here of the Davis Visitor Center at the Fellows Riverside Gardens. He allows us to use this beautiful center to bring you the show. And if you're in the neighborhood or anywhere in the Metro Park area, stop in and use the Metro Parks. Until next time, thanks for watching.